Hi, everybody. Thanks for connecting to this webinar. We are very happy this morning to talk about instant payment. I'm Stephane Marchaland from Arkéa Banking Services. We provide financial services to payment service provider, banks, fintech, all type of financial institutions. And this morning, we thought it would be interesting to talk about instant payment. It's a major issue in the payment industry. It's already live. So after 6 months, it's important to update our information about what is really happening on that. Instant payment is well, we believe it's a very important change in the payment industry in Europe, at least. We are today in I want to know generation. I want to know a global. I want to know with the digital tools, with everything like that. And of course, instant payment fully enter in that mood, in that trend. Security of payment, and you receive the fund instantly. So it's really in phase with what's happening globally in the digital economy, I would say. We of course have the a view on what happened in UK with faster payment, and I think we can say today it's a success. So why wouldn't we copy that? And we have use cases over there. We have, I think, good adoption with the final client there. So it's very interesting. We have instant payment initiative in the States too, and other places in the world. So it's time to go. Maybe we are even a bit late. I don't know, but at least we are in now, and we want to tell you that instant payment is a reality today, and that everybody should think about that. The third point I would like to point out is instant payment itself. Of course, it's great value to receive in real-time transaction. I would say roughly real-time transaction. It's obviously a good value already. But around this instant payment transaction, I hope, and I think it will be, you will have creation of lots of new services, lots of these famous new cases, business cases around the instant payment with information given to the final client and all type of marketing impact and things like that. And that's very important because you have this new type of financial institution, the fintech, which is there to a reality today. And I really believe that those fintech will lead the market, creating this innovation around this product and use this product to offer new services, new marketing opportunity, new business cases to the final client. So to make things real today, we asked David Renault from EBA RT1 to join, and thanks a lot to him for being there. I think he is in the heart of the system, so it's a good person to tell us what's really happening and what are the perspectives. So David, thanks. And
thanks to you first for this invitation to invite me to come today to this webinar and to introduce the RT1 system. Maybe I first introduce myself. So I'm David Renault. I'm working for EBA Clearing. I have been for now a number of years involved in the SEPA payments. We have our system called Step 2 that process SEPA credit transfer and SEPA direct debit. And for the instant payment, we have created a new platform that is available 24/7 and has to work in real time. So that's what we say. RT1 is real and timely because it's already there. And I will show a number of slides that will tell you a bit more precisely where we are, where we stand with RT1. RT1 went live on the 21st November last year in 2017. And since then, it never stopped. It has been running all the time. So it's really 24/7, day, night, weekends. That's a system that will always be operating. And that's interesting indeed to see that from the very first day, we have seen payments coming to the platform during the night and during the weekend. Of course, there are less payment during the night than during the day. There are also less payment during the weekends, but they are there. So the fact that the platform is always available is also used by the end users. 6 months after the launch, now we have on average 10,000 payments per day. So that's already a good start, I would say. And in total, we have processed on RT1 more than 1.5 million transactions since the launch, and that creates a value of more than €1 billion of instant payment that have already been processed, which probably makes that thousands of European people have already experienced the real-time payments. What is also a very interesting point is that more than 99% of the transactions are being processed in less than 2 seconds. A majority of these transactions have been even processed in less than a second. So that's the second point. It's 24/7 available, and that's truly real time.
So we are really under the threshold of 10 seconds, 20 seconds. So
far below, yes.
And is it because of the 10,000 payments per day? It's a very good start, but if we increase the volume, and if we reach what is expected, I mean that instant payment could replace traditional credit transfer. What are the perspectives about that?
Well, that's a scalable platform, and we expect to receive more volume. In step 2 today, there are on average 18 million payments per day. So you see the potential for migration from SCT to SCT Inst. And now the platform is already today good for much higher volumes and with the same performance. Yes.
Okay, great.
Moving on to the next slide, it's also something very important for the system, that it provides the full certainty on the payments. We have designated RT1 like all the other systems that are being operated by EPA clearing under the Settlement Finality Directive. So it's a bit a legal jargon, but that means that when a SEPA credit transfer has been settled between 2 credit institutions in the system, it's irrevocable and it's final. So you can make the funds available to your customers without taking any credit risk. And that's also something very important, because the introduction of the instant payment compared to the batch SCT, where you have time to process, you have time until D+1 to make funds available to your customers, so you can make sure that the settlement has also taken place and you don't take risks. For RT1, the 2 things happened at the very same time, so there's no risk taken.
So irrevocability is a principle of instant payment, but you have the recall too. How can those 2 points can mix?
So that's not a contradiction. It may look like a contradiction, but in fact it is not. The recall is an additional feature. So you can imagine some situations. I can make a payment this morning, and this afternoon I completely forgot that I have made already this payment, and I do it again. The 2 payments are irrevocable. But there is a justification that I can contact my bank and say, oops, actually I have made this payment twice and I would like to get one back. So I ask for a recall, and the beneficiary bank that received the funds will also see, and also the end customer, the beneficiary, will recognize that, oh, I have 2 payments for the same thing, so I can return one of the 2. So those 2 notions are actually complementary, and they are not entering into contradiction.
Okay. I see. In terms of another important subject about instant payment is reachability, and I see interoperability. maybe we can make a point about interoperability. So you have different provider of clearinghouse for instant payment in Europe, pan-European or local one. So interoperability is an important topic for everybody to understand the cover of instant payments. So what is interoperability effective? Will it be effective? Or?
It's already a reality today. From the launch of the system, we had already another system, Iberpay, to name it, which is a Spanish system that was already connected with RT1, and so now we have the proof of concept that has been passed. I'm coming back from Munich, where we had EBA Day last week, and we had some representative from Iberpay that came to one of our panel and that explained that interoperability works fine even for instant payment, and that actually the performance seems exactly the same as a domestic payment, whether it's cross-border or domestic. This also happened in a couple of seconds, so that's very reassuring for the future. And now we have two systems connected. Since April, there is the ICBPI now called Nexi, which is an Italian system, and that has also a community of institutions in Italy that are preparing for joining SCT Inst and RT1 through the same interface. They can have one single interface with the local system and open to the pan-European reach by connecting to RT1. And for the future, I can only see that the systems that have a local reach will anyway have to connect to RT1 or TIPS, and most of the time maybe both, to make sure that they can reach anyone that is part of the instant payment scheme.
So you're working on interoperability with TIPS too?
Absolutely, yes. As soon as the TIPS will go live, RT1 will be connected to TIPS. In the TIPS terminology, it is called the instructing party. So the participants that already live with RT1 and those that will join this year and also next year, they will immediately have this possibility to send also instant payment to some beneficiary banks that have an account with TIPS.
And do you have other discussion with some other local clearinghouses?
All of them.
All of them, okay. So
all
France,
of them, but
France,
they have
Portugal.
Absolutely,
okay.
But they have different plannings, and we collaborate with them according to their plans. We cannot rush them, or we can a bit, but they have their own plans, they have their own constraints, and we understand that.
And do you have an idea in terms of long-term planning, or is it global interoperability in the next 12 months, 24 months, or maybe no?
That's a difficult question, but I heard very often the people say, it took 10 years for SEPA.
Yeah.
Which is true, but before SEPA, there was no SEPA. Instant payment is building on a very solid infrastructure that has been built for SEPA, and I'm pretty sure that it will take less than 10 years, because I see from the different feedback that we receive that there is great expectations. Most of the markets want to move as fast as possible, but there are also other projects. We can talk about PSD2, we can talk about compliance as well, and this is of course a conflict in the project portfolio. You cannot do everything at the same time, but I think it will come very, very shortly.
Just a more precise question, for more practical question. For example, if you use interconnection with TIPS, will in your repository of reachable PSP, will you include the BIC in the RT1 repository of the reachable BIC? Will it include the big just connected on tips when you will have interoperability. So will people can use this repository to know without thinking of they are on tips, they are on RT1, they are on.
So for tips in particular, you mean?
No, but other interconnection. When you will interconnect with, for example, in France we have STEP, which is an instant payment. When you will have interconnection with STEP, for example, in France, will you have in your repository the list of reachable BIC in France, even if they are not on RT1? Yeah.
All the institutions that will make themselves reachable will be listed in what we call our routing tables, and that's, for example, the case of. I take again the example of Spain. All the Spanish banks that participate in IBP also participate in RT1. Maybe not exactly in the same way, that you can be a direct participant in IBP and you decide that for RT1 you come as a reachable party of another bank. Everything is possible. The participation model is very flexible and can accommodate many different types of situations. And in RT1 routing tables today, you will find the Spanish banks, you will find the Italian banks. Some of them are technically directly connected to RT1. Some might be connected via another system. But that's, I will not say it's not irrelevant, but for the end user, what you want to know is which institution you can reach. And that's what the routing table will tell you. Okay. And I actually also present this picture where we see the volumes evolving since the launch. And we see that there is, of course, an increasing trend. I said we are around 10,000 transactions on average per day. We see on some days that we are very close to 20,000 transactions. We see a drop every weekend. So even in the real-time 24/7 world, from time to time, people take some rest. They are not always working, but still, the system is always up and running and ready to process payment at any time of the day with exactly the same performance. So we were talking about reach. We have lots of activities in this domain this year. Last year, we launched a new system. We had already 20 banks from the very early days. And every 3 months or so, we have a window with a number of direct participants. So what the number that you see on this picture only reflect the number of direct participants. And of course, each of them come with a community of reachable entities that can be branches, that can be other banks, that can be payment institutions, e-money institutions as well. Any kind of entities that can adhere to the SCT Inc. scheme can join the system as an addressable party, addressable PSP, we say in the RT1 terminology. So we have at the moment a window that will go live in beginning of July with 7 additional direct participants. They are mainly from Germany and Italy. Germany is moving now; it's coming, and that will, I think, very much boost the reach and also the volume that I think will take another step after the summer. As you can see here, a large number of institutions will join at the end of the year. And there are some reasons for that. We talked about TIPS that is scheduled to go live in November this year. We should talk about also SwiftNet Instant, which is a new way to connect to the payment system like RT1. And a number of those institutions have been waiting for Swift to deliver this solution so that they can connect to the payment systems. So that will be really also one of the key development at the end of this year that will allow instant payment to move to another step, to another dimension. And of course, we will continue in 2019. It's not the job will not be completed at the end of the year, but you can see that we already expect that by the end of the year, in terms of number of entities reachable, what we'll get in RT1 at the end of the year will be around 60% of the existing SEPA credit transfer scheme. So that means, in practice, that potentially 60% of the SEPA credit transfer volumes could migrate to SCT. So but that will not happen instantly.
Okay.
Nevertheless, we hear more and more from the countries or from individual banks that their ambition is to make the instant payment the new normal. So everything that is processed today with a SEPA credit transfer can potentially be made instant. But we will see what the future will give. I think that answers a bit also the question that you had on the
geography,
on the reach. On the following slide, we have a European map. It will be coming to your screens in a second. This is on this one we have the picture on where we are today. So the countries in blue are those that are where we already have at least one payment service provider that is in the routing tables that has made his adherence to the SCT in scheme and that has made itself reachable through RT1, either directly or as an addressable PSP. And the more we are in the dark blue color, it means that we get closer to the full reach. I think the situation today, only Austria has a situation where almost all Austrian institutions are reachable, and they did it from the day one on the 21st November 2017. For the other countries, it will come little by little, depending on the plans of the different stakeholders. But there's already quite a good reach in Spain, as I mentioned. Also, Italy is moving rather fast, and now we see Germany also moving. There's very also active community in the Nordics. I would say, as usual, in the north of Europe is very fond of innovations in payments, and we expect even more activities there because there are some major players in Scandinavian/Nordic countries that are in the process of now joining RT1, and that will also make it possible to have more domestic and more use case to really come to reality, I would say.
Does that mean, reading that map, that today most of the transactions are domestic transactions, or do you have cross-border transactions too?
We have a lot of cross-border transactions as well from the very beginning. This comes from those institutions that, as soon as they're live with SCT Int, they try to send everything they can as an instant payment.
Okay.
So they can find some other institution in the same country, but also in other countries, and they do not make a real difference between domestic and cross-border. Actually, that's the idea of SEPA, right?
Yeah.
SEPA is to make Europe a domestic market for payments. And on the next slide, that you will see in a couple of seconds, it is showing what should be the situation at the end of the year. So we will have SwiftNet Instant live, so a number of participants will then be able to connect to RT1. There will be new systems also in principle that are scheduled to go live in November 2018. So that will really now create a possibility for any PSP everywhere in Europe to connect to a system and to exchange with all the other PSPs in Europe that are also addressable. So there is a very good also very decent reach that will be already there at the end of this year. So it's kind of tomorrow.
Yeah, November. It's November, so
it's kind of tomorrow, and to get the full reach, of course, the last 20% is always a challenge, and but I think 2019 will get very close to the full reach.
Okay, that's very interesting, because depending on some country, you don't have a clear idea of effectiveness of instant payment. You know, we are in France today. In France, instant payment is not in all conversation yet, but we can see that in some other country, it's more a concern. Yeah.
We are in France and we have a conversation on instant payment.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And you made some announcement in some recent conferences and so on, and some others as well are communicating quite a lot on instant payment. So even in France, I think instant payment is really a big topic. And as we said at the very beginning, we are not moving in Europe at the same pace. The agenda are a bit different, but I'm quite confident that in a couple of years, all those the market will organize itself to have the full reach. There's also some interesting combinations between PSD2 and instant payment that I think will create a new use case and will raise the awareness of the customer. And I think as soon as the customer will know that instant payment exists, they will get very interested by this new product, and they will expect more payment to be instant. Yeah. So we see, I don't really make the difference between the merchant and the payer, because I also think that in some use case, you feel much more comfortable when you know that your money has reached its destination. So I think also there's some value for the payer.
Yeah, you have irrevocability. You know that the funds are there, so you can have at least the return of the merchant that they receive the money, and so everything is clear, and you're not wasting. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so we are still evolving the platform. In the few days, actually, from now, we will provide some additional tools for our participants to manage their liquidity. The finality and the instant finality of the transactions processed in RT1 is managed in a combination with central bank money and on a technical account that is in target 2, and we'll provide some additional tools for the participants to manage this liquidity, and also to create some collaboration with other institutions that do not have necessarily the access to target 2, because you have to be, I think you need to have a full banking license to have an account in target 2. But the participation model of RT1 allows for collaboration with banks and non-banks. So banks can provide banking services and access to the system and settle the transactions. And payment institutions can be addressable and can create this nice and sexy user experience for the customers. And we already mentioned the very much expected and important development for the end of this year. SwiftNet Instant will be the new connectivity options for quite a large number of actors. Tips will be there, so a new pan-European system will be live, and the two pan-European system RT1 and TIPS will be interconnected, so that will also increase the reach and increase the possibilities. And the last point, the closed user groups, it's mainly for specific communities that already have the ambition to use instant payment for without limit and without limit on the amount in particular.
Yeah, because today it's 15,000 euros.
Correct.
The basic limit.
So already even the rule book has foreseen some flexibility. The SCT INST rule book has the possibility to review the amount limit. I think it could happen several times in a year.
Okay.
But you have to go through, I think, at least 90 days of public consultation. That's the rule of the EPC. So it cannot be shorter than that. But still, you may imagine that in the coming years, the threshold will increase.
Is there something already planned?
No, not that I know. But the communities, it can even be a bilateral agreement between two participants, or it can be a multilateral agreement at the level of a whole country or even larger than a country, can decide to form a closed user group, and all the institutions that are part of this closed user group will be allowed to exchange instant payment without a limit on the amount. And the other point on the shorter cutoff, as you know, in the rule book there is an objective of 10 seconds, and we've seen in the introduction that actually there is room to do much better than 10 seconds. The technology today allows to do much better, but in some use case you don't want to have your customer to wait 10 seconds, and even in the worst case scenario it can be 20 seconds before really the transaction is aborted. 20 seconds is really the longest period possible in the interbank domain. So for this reason, there are some requests to have cutoff at 5 seconds. So at least the consumer knows at the latest 5 seconds after the initiation of the payment if it was successful or not. That this closed user group will also be available in November this year.
Okay.
And as a conclusion, RT1 is a system that can continue to evolve in the future. It has been designed by or in collaboration with payment service providers that supported the initiative back in 2014, 2015, and they have also brought their time and brain cells to create the specifications, and those are also very deeply involved in the governance of the system. The system is governed by a representative of its users. There is an extensive reach already today, and that will continue to increase over time. And I wanted also to mention the flexible participation model that allows some collaboration between participants, banks and payment institutions, e-money institutions, and also the technical service providers that have been involved since the very beginning. We saw that it was a good idea that technical service providers can have access to the specifications, and so that they can prepare the solutions and reduce the time to market of these solutions, so that then the readiness for instant payment is increased and the time to market is reduced. And you guys, Arkéa Banking Services, actually you have ticked all the boxes. So you have this collaboration, you create a platform, and you have also a collaboration with some of those technical service providers that know very well how RT1 works. So that's really fit very well in what we have designed some years ago. So congratulations for that.
You're welcome. I just have some questions we received. I have some question about the record. Can they be rejected? So I think we already told a bit about that. Yeah. So
the decision to return the funds is completely on that's the decision of the beneficiary bank. That's for sure.
A few questions too between RT1 and TIPS about settlement finality or advantage of it or comparison between the two of them.
From a finality point of view, don't think there is any difference actually, because the systems are all being designated under the Settlement Finality Directive. You have some difference though, because a directive is a directive, which means that it has to be implemented in the local law. So then you can have, but here we are coming really into the technicalities and very into the details. So what I think we have to make it clear is that a SEPA credit transfer is an irrevocable payment, and an SCT is also a SEPA credit transfer. So they fall under the same legal regime, and you have exactly the same finality in the end, that the payment that has been processed as a SEPA credit transfer instant is irrevocable and final. Okay. That mainly protects against situations like insolvability. If a bank goes insolvent, there is no risk that someone can come and say, I want this money back. That's the protection that is granted by the Settlement Finality Directive, is mainly for these situations.
A question more precise, maybe we weren't very precise. So just today, how many PSP are reachable with the instant payment schemes in Europe? So at today, so we estimate 60% of the market at the end of the year. So what about today? Exactly.
Today, more than I think close to 600 institutions are already reachable. The EPC register has more. I think they are close to 1,000.
Okay.
But you have a number of banking groups that have just made their registration to the scheme, but still they are not reachable anywhere. So they will come, but that gives an outlook on what is to come. And RT1 has nearly 100% of the institutions that have adhered to the scheme and that are also addressable through a payment system, but that are really active in the instant payment today.
And compared to traditional SCT, so 600 for RT1 and for SEPA credit transfer?
Yeah, so there is room for improvement indeed, because we have nearly 5,000 in SEPA credit transfer today. Okay, so that's the target, and that's why we compare when we say 20%, 50%, 60%. We compare with the nearly 5,000 BICs that are the institutions that are reachable in a SEPA credit transfer today. So 60% by the end of the year mean more or less 3,000 institutions that will be already reachable.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. We have some other questions, but we will answer them by mail to all participants. We will send you the presentation too. So thanks a lot, David.
You're welcome.
It was
thanks to you.
A good update on what's really happening on instant payment. And
I hope so.
If the return is good on this webinar, maybe you can imagine to have a second one at the end of the year. Things will move quickly, so it will be interesting to have a new update on the situation and what's happening. I hope it will be positive. I'm optimistic.
We can be optimistic. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody. Thanks for listening to us, and and maybe we'll have another talk at the end of the year. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye.